Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. My name is Tyson Choptain. I'm the Executive Vice President of Broadview Networks, and I'm joined today by Jordan Bissonnette, our Solutions Analyst who specializes in our business process automation, leveraging the Microsoft 365 stack of tools. So today we're going to talk about business process automation, and the way we're going to start this conversation. So we're going to talk a little bit about reports and dashboards and do some demonstrations of reports and dashboards. We're going to talk about different options for data capture, how you want to get data into some sort of a system to be able to leverage that data, to report on it, to display it, to utilize that data in a different format than the data natively exists. We're then going to talk about workflow automation and task creation. And really, this is where we get into more of the business process automation side. And we start talking about how we can leverage the tools in Microsoft 365 to allow for the functionality of helping to improve business processes and even automating some of those business processes. So we'll talk about Power BI, which is the reporting and data visualization tool, and the benefits of Power BI over traditional Excel spreadsheets and graphs. We'll talk about Power Apps, which is Microsoft's newest solution for how you can create full applications, forms that can be filled out, whether it be on a website, on a mobile device. We'll talk about Power Automate, which used to be called Flow, which is where you build very simple or quite complex workflows to move data, to move a form or a set of content from one approver to another, to pull data in from other sources, to act based on what someone else does or another task that's performed. A lot of the data we're going to talk about can exist in either OneDrive or SharePoint. OneDrive really just being a very unique extension of SharePoint for an individual user. Once the data is in the cloud, you make that data or those applications much more available to Power BI, to Flow, Power Automate, and you start being able to leverage that data. Usually Excel data, could be other formats of data as well, with those other tools, and start being able to accomplish a higher level of business process and automation. So talking about reporting and dashboarding, a lot of us probably for years have used Excel charts and graphs. They're great. They are an easy way to grab a picture, drop it into a PowerPoint, and share it with other people. They're an easy way to review data, but they're not designed to be shared amongst multiple people in a very dynamic manner. You can't easily take an Excel spreadsheet and give just the charts and graphs to someone without giving them the whole Excel spreadsheet. And you may want a lot of different people in your organization to view data, reports, KPIs, whatever you want to call that data in the way you want to view it, but you don't necessarily want them to actually have the data. You just want them to be able to interact with the charts and graphs and information without actually accessing the raw data itself. And Power BI does that very well. Another challenge you're going to have with tools like Microsoft Excel is you're going to have limitations in the ability to customize what different people can do with the views they have of the data without giving them access to the source data. You don't necessarily want most users to have access to the source data. You just want them to have access to the necessary views of the data so that they can create or work with the charts and graphs that have already, or tables that have already been created in Power BI. So in the first example, we're going to show some key performance indicator style dashboards, give some examples of sales performance, finance. This is going to give you an idea of what the data visualization in Power BI can do and what that can do to assist your organization in being able to view your data, which in and of itself could be business process improvement. And the automation side can start coming in the sense that one person can be managing that data or those views and providing it to many via Power BI. We'll also show some Power BI reports, tracking and data representation. Power BI makes it very easy to show data in a wide variety of different formats, and we'll go through that. So I'm going to introduce Jordan to start the demonstration process and show you some examples of how we've been reporting data with Power BI.
So thanks, Tyson. Here I will be, I guess I'll start off with showing the demo of the sales, or
Jordan,
I guess,
sorry to interrupt. I think you're sharing your team screen, not your browser that you wanted to be sharing.
I shared my, oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
Thought I chose screen too, but apparently not. So let me take a step back here and just show some of the advantages of the Power BI tool overall versus an Excel report. So as many of you know, Excel has kind of been used, since the beginning of time almost, to kind of generate basic reporting. There's normally a few people in every team that are really good with creating charts, pivot tables, but there's really a kind of point where a Excel spreadsheet will kind of plateau, and then that's where a tool like this can really take it to the next level. So one of the nice things is you now have one general area where you can have all these different reports shared to you. So based on who's allowed to see what report, you can have those made right available to you all in one nice area here. So I'll just kind of poke through a few of these to show some of the other advantages that you have in Power BI reports. So one is here you have a nice visual dashboard, and where everything in Power BI is clickable and searchable. So let's say we're looking here at the dashboard for the Winnipeg sales. When you click on one tile, or when you click on a particular month, it'll automatically filter and sort and display the other graphs in that page. So that's a very kind of one of the main powerful tools of this is that things are just automatically searchable and filterable like this. Now you can also, and I'm going to jump into the project reports here. Like I mentioned, or here is an example of a project report where you can now throw in some extra indicators, KPIs. We can have a map where we can click on a particular month, and now we're seeing, or sorry, a particular province where we're seeing all of the sales, the hours worked, the overdue projects for that particular province. So here's just a great example. And then, like Tyson also mentioned, this can be viewed from your phone. You can download the Power BI app. It can be directly embedded inside of a team, inside of a SharePoint site. So it really gives you the flexibility of viewing the reports in a bunch of different ways versus just having Excel spreadsheets.
Now, Jordan, to be able to represent data by geography, for example, like you show here, did you have to program a lot of geography information into the system, or did you just have to have provinces and it was able to recognize that?
Yeah, so in this scenario, in the project list is being pulled from a SharePoint list, and the projects are getting flagged as what city or what what province that they're you know, being in, and then from there we can just build a report and a graph that will automatically pull that information and then be able to display it in a map like this.
So the visualization capabilities in Power BI have that built in as long as you've got cities and provinces in your data set.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then you can use that as a filtering mechanism, as you just demonstrated. Just by clicking on that region, you filter the data to that region.
Yeah.
And then you can further filter by other filter selections within that data that's now been filtered based on that geographic selection, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So you can keep kind of drilling down as kind of far as you can go, and whereas if you want to, you know, see all the Manitoba projects that are in the estimation phase, things like that. So it really lets you kind of create your own reports on the fly, where your reports could just keep kind of evolving throughout a meeting. If you're, hey, if you're wondering, you know, I wonder how many, you know, restaurant projects we've had. It's just, instead of someone creating a brand new report for that, you can answer your question right there.
And when we expose these dashboards to individuals that have no real knowledge what the underlying data is or how it got into here, they don't have to have ever used with the database or the Excel spreadsheet or wherever that data came from to be able to use this dashboard. You can just share this dashboard with them and they can visualize the data as you're showing here and use the searching and filtering that you've made available to them when you created that dashboard, correct?
Yes, exactly. And that's another one of the strengths is you can make the kind of, you know, reports available, but without giving people access to the actual with the actual data set in the background. Whereas with an Excel spreadsheet, it's kind of really hard to give someone access to just the report portion and then have the rest kind of hidden, right? And you can even take these one step further, where you can have security based on different roles. So you could be looking at the same report, and let's say you're from you know, Saskatchewan. If you're an employee that's been branded as, you know, a Saskatchewan employee, you could only, it's possible to make it so that you'll by default only see the stuff related to that role. So we can take reports one step further as well and start introducing what's called row level security to really limit what people can see as well.
Now, given that this data is in the cloud, is it as safe as having it in an Excel spreadsheet on site?
Yes, and I mean, I'd say it's even like safer, and especially like in this scenario, this is all in coming from files in SharePoint sites, OneDrive, which is all you know, MFA. So you need to be able to log in with your dual factor authentication just to get into Power BI, just to open the Power BI app. So it's definitely secure, and it's definitely more secure than just sending someone an email with an Excel attachment with the reports, right? And from there they could be forwarded to anyone. So
excellent, thank you. So next, I want to talk a little bit about data capture and the critical concept of data capture that we need to talk about is the limitations that exist within most data capture scenarios today. Depending on the data that you want to be able to report on or visualize, you're going to be restricted by whatever applications you may already be using. So an advantage of a tool like Power BI for data reporting is once you get the data out of whatever application database that your data is currently in, we can bring that data into Power BI in one of a different number of formats. And you know, even if you're working with spreadsheets today, Spreadsheets, as I mentioned earlier, and as Jordan mentioned, and we really can't harp on this enough because of how much people do in spreadsheets. And we've seen company run their entire finances off of spreadsheets. We've seen spreadsheets nested within spreadsheets, nested within spreadsheets. And as great a tool as Excel is, it's really designed to only ever be used by one person at a time. And that's where Power BI can really help with that. It might make sense to take data from multiple different data sources and bring it into Power BI, whether those be databases that have Power BI direct capabilities, whether they be spreadsheets that are exports from other databases, whether they be cloud-based services that will actually provide their data directly to Power BI. Power BI can give you the ability to bring that data together and share that data. And that really comes down to how you're going to capture data. A lot of people have used Word documents and Excel spreadsheets as a mechanism for data capture in the past, or possibly even used paper-based documents for data capture. The challenges with that is that every time you're taking data from one source to another and a human being is involved in taking that data and putting it into another format, so paper to Excel or Word to Excel or one application set to another data set, there's a risk for errors in the data. So we want to have humans touching the data the least number of times possible. So we want to combine data from multiple applications or data sets as automated and non-human intervention as possible. We want to use electronic forms, or we want to use Power Apps, which is basically a high-end electronic form in some cases, to get the data in so that people are touching the data the least number of times possible. So the examples we're going to show here is a very basic survey collection, review, and reporting. So we'll kind of take you through that whole life cycle of how we got the data in, what we can do to review the data, and then what kind of reports we can generate out of that data. So I'll pass it back over to Jordan.
Okay, so on this example, I'll kind of demonstrate a little bit how we can leverage forms for really different ways of getting people to fill out information. So whether it's something as simple as struggling to get your employees to sign up for, you know, a company event, a company barbecue, having someone sending a bunch of emails, I want a burger, I want fries, things like that, and then having someone having like what we what was mentioned, having someone having to manually enter in all this data into Excel spreadsheets just from emails, or something more like this example where here at, and this is being used by us right now, it's our membership survey. So this survey gets sent out, and there's probably a few of you on this webinar that have already seen this or filled this one out. So here's an example of a form, and forms can be built pretty simply within really 10-15 minutes. You can build a simple professional looking form that can be sent out to internal or people outside the company as well. And now forms does give you the option to be able to export all the survey results to an Excel spreadsheet, but once again, that's a very manual, it's very takes a lot of work to then make sense of it and make some nice reports of it. So what in this scenario, what we're doing is when a survey gets filled out, there is a flow that is going to capture all the survey answers and then put that inside of a SharePoint list here. So now what we've done is we've removed the survey answers from forms, and we've saved them now in a database where they can now be viewed and filtered and manipulated if for whatever reason an answer needs to get changed. If someone calls and says, you know, actually I said I wanted this, but I needed this instead. The information can be kind of curated inside of a SharePoint list, and you can filter by different companies or whatever. And then from here, we can now connect Power BI to this SharePoint list to create some reports. So here I'll just bring up this report. So now we have these live real-time reports generated by the survey results. So now we've gone from this step of getting someone to fill out a survey to the final step here, and there's been zero minutes of manual data entry or reporting by anyone. This is just refreshed on a schedule, and this is always up to date. So it really lets you have all this information right at your fingertips without having to manually do any work to get this to get these results. And like I mentioned, this can be accessed here. It's in a browser, but we've also have it embedded directly in the team for the Broadview Academy group, so they can now be looking at these survey results directly in their team without having to leave it.
So Jordan, just to recap, there's no manual data manipulation required unless, like you said, there's an error. A form gets sent out, people fill out the form electronically online, that automatically goes into the SharePoint list, and then from that SharePoint list, we were able to build the Power BI report that you're showing here.
Yeah, exactly. And then one of the other neat features is this can all be exported to a PDF or to a PowerPoint. So if a particular client or if you want to produce a report that needs to get sent out, you can do an export of these so that there still is the option, if you do need to send these out to someone or you do need to print them out, these can all be exported that way. So it gives you that extra option as well.
Excellent.
Now for the next example, I guess I'll jump into the safety tracking. So on this demo here, I've chosen to use safety, but this is another great fit for things like a vacation request or a travel request or quality issue tracking. Anytime things are currently being tracked via email or via an actual physical paper or just Excel spreadsheets, there's definitely room for improvement. And then this is where transforming things into online forms via using a SharePoint list or a Power App can really start to benefit. So I'll just quickly go through filling out a safety incident here, and then I'll kind of explain what's all going on. So I'll just say April, what day are we? April 29th. One.
And Jordan, you're filling this in on the web, but this could also be done on a mobile app, as this is a Power App, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Or a tablet.
Yeah.
So it really could be done on PC, Mac, browser-based, tablet, mobile device, doesn't really matter, pretty much cross-platform.
Yeah, so now here, instead of someone getting hurt, a physical piece of paper getting filled out and then dropped off on the safety officer's desk, it's now being filled out electronically like this. Now, there's a bunch of extra things we could do now that it is an electronic form. One is we can add some emails and some notifications. So what we could do is when a safety incident gets filled out, we can have an automatic email go out to the manager of that employee or to the safety officer, or maybe when it reaches a certain threshold, like if it's a moderate or a high severity issue, it can go to the president of the company. So there's all these different options we could do here, and I just received the email. I'll just bring it over. So now here's an example of just a very simple basic email just saying a new safety incident has happened, gives you a bit of information, and click here to go view the incident. So, and then some of the other advantages you'll see here is now we can have a nice kind of dashboard showing all these incidents. So here's all the recent incidents. But let's say you want to see the incidents grouped by the severity or the department or the employee. So now we're looking at these same things, but in many different ways by leveraging different views and different filters inside of this SharePoint list. So these are all things that would be impossible if you were just tracking this all in Excel spreadsheets, or just even worse, just someone having a box on their desk with all the safety incidents. If someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, how many incidents did we have last month?" or "How many incidents have we had that have involved like a leg or an arm?" That would be very hard to just produce that on the spot, especially if that's all being done paper-based and Excel-based. Now, and then here we can have these viewed. In this example, I have them displayed in a calendar. So let's say you have a monthly safety meeting. It becomes very, very simple. At the end of the month, you go, you look at the month. Here are all our safety incidents. You can click on it, see it right there. It just becomes very, very simple in that sense. And then once again, since these are now inside of a SharePoint list, we can have Power BI reports generated in real time. So now we have reports on all our safety incidents. So now the safety officer isn't spending any time generating monthly reports. They're just here all the time in real time on this site.
And Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned that you showed a very simple workflow that when the form gets filled out, being an electronic form, the data goes in, it sends an email to whoever you want to send the email to. But that could actually be an approval process as well, correct? Where one email goes to one individual letting them know, and then they have to come in, review the data, and then accept the form as a way so that forms can't go in if they're not filled out properly, for example.
Yes.
So you can have acceptance process as part of that workflow as well, correct?
Yes, and for something like this, you might have a kind of status where it's a safety incident is open or is closed, and before you go to close it, you can have, let's say, where you've decided, you know, what have we done to mitigate this issue, and then that could get emailed, and we can have an approval process where, okay, we've all accepted that this safety incident can now be closed, right? And then it can help you track things that are open or closed. And like I mentioned, this example is for safety incidents, but you can imagine this for anything, tracking like quality issues, tracking changes, outages, maintenance, anything you're currently having trouble trying to track and report. And this is where SharePoint leveraging lists and workflows can really make your life a lot simpler.
Excellent. Do you want to show the contract renewals?
Yeah, so I'll on this next example. So this example was showing how your main point of entry is a form. So it's an online form. Where in this next example, our starting point isn't a form. Our starting point is an actual document. So there's a lot of times where it's very, like I see it all the time where there's just documents scattered all over network shares, desktops, etc. And you'll have folders full of like documents of warranty files, contracts, insurance documents, and there's not there's no way to just easily report on that. So if someone or if you need to keep track of, hey, when are these insurance documents or these contracts expiring, there's no easy way to report and track on that. So once again, someone is most likely keeping a separate Excel spreadsheet up to date where here's when this certificate is expiring, or they're putting themselves reminders in their Outlook to, 6 months from now, I need to remember to renew this kind of website. I've seen a lot of websites expire, certificates expire because there's no easy way to keep a track of all that. So now what in this example here, we're starting with a document where instead of saving the actual contract inside of a network drive, we're going to be putting it inside of a SharePoint site. Now, once it's in a SharePoint site, we can force tags on these specific documents. So in this scenario, it's just very simple and basic. When a new document gets added, we're forced to say what's the type of document, who's the owner, and then most importantly, when does it expire? And now just by forcing that, we can now have a dashboard showing us here are all the items expiring in the next 60 days. Here's all the recent contracts. And then same thing like the other like in the safety example, we can now be looking at these things in different ways, something you would never be able to do inside of a network drive. You would never be able to say, show me all of the contracts that are owned by a specific person or by type or which ones are leases or which one. So there's just all those extra possibilities. Now we can also bring in our friend Power Automate into the mix and start having automated notifications. So here is an example of having these kind of weekly reminders. Here are the documents expiring in the next 60 days. So it's now once a week. It's in this example, there's a flow that's scanning through the list, looking for whichever documents are going to be expiring the next 60 days, and then sending that off to whoever we've kind of decided. It could be the owner of the document, it could be whoever's in charge of finance, etc. And now it's becomes a lot harder to forget about a renewal. Or I've seen a lot of examples as well of people getting renewed into another 3-year term of a specific, whether it's like your alarm company or a phone contract, internet contract. If you miss that window, you just get auto renewed, and they often aren't going out of their way to remind you, hey, you only have 30 days to back out, or we're going to renew you for another 3 years. So this is where a tool like this can really help you stay on top of all these different documents that you're trying to keep track of.
And so we can implement this where we set up the SharePoint site, set up the rules, set up a little bit of Power Automate automation steps, and then people can manually put the documents in. We could even set up a Power App where they fill out all the necessary content, attach the document, and it goes in that way if you wanted to automate the process even further, correct?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then one thing I also just wanted to, for the people that do still love Excel, one of the nice features as well of SharePoint lists and libraries is you can actually export any of this to an Excel spreadsheet. So here's the list of the safety of all the safety issues. We could do the same thing with the contracts. If for whatever reason you do you do need to look at this in Excel, or you do need to, let's say, print it or send it off to someone outside the company, you still at the end of the day have the option to do a full like Excel export, which you'll now be able to view this all inside of an Excel spreadsheet. So it still gives you the option to do it in Excel, except now it's being done automatically.
And I should have mentioned at the beginning, please feel free to ask questions along the way. I see there's one question already. Just to clarify what we're meaning when we say automation, we want to, whenever possible, take what is usually a manual step that a person usually had to do something, a task, and we want to allow the system to be programmed to do that task on a person's behalf, freeing that person up from having to do that task manually or repetitively. So anytime we can replace a manual task a person has to do, in this case, we're going to consider that automation, and we're going to be automating that piece of that process to make the overall experience better for all the users, faster, simpler, and usually less mistakes when it's automated versus when it's a manual task being performed. Jordan, can you spend a minute and not go, super deep, not a training session, but sort of lift the hood under Power BI a little bit and just kind of show people what a Power App even looks like, and that these aren't incredibly complicated pieces to put together to achieve a business process automation or to achieve reporting via Power BI. While we have a number of resources that can assist with this, Jordan being that primary resource, these are not massive programming projects by any means. The majority of what we're talking about here can be done in 2 to 3 day micro engagements, and they can be very quick wins for you and for the organization overall. We don't have to go through months of planning and complex programming and development here. The majority of what Jordan's shown here today can be done and delivered within a couple days of work. So while Jordan pulls up Power BI, I'll just bring up the first question, because then he can demonstrate that a little bit. And the question is, what's the process of transitioning existing Excel spreadsheets into Power Apps? So depending on what you want to do with that Excel spreadsheet and how you want to utilize the data in it, or how you want to modify the process of how you get data into it, the best way to do that might be a SharePoint list that's driven by a form or a Power App, or it might be that Excel is still the best way to input your data, and then you use that Excel spreadsheet that's stored in SharePoint instead of being stored on someone's local drive or the network drive, and then expose that and make it available to Power BI.
Yeah. So in this example, what I'll show here is how. So this is the desktop app where you'd actually be building the reports before they get published out to the web, so that the rest of the employees can see it. So here, and then this is one of the main strengths of this tool is you can be connected to multiple different types of data. So it can be Excel spreadsheets, it could be SharePoint lists, SQL databases, third-party tools in the cloud. So it really lets you connect to a bunch of different things, and then be able to roll up all that data into one nice kind of nice visual like this, where in this example, some of this stuff is coming from a SharePoint site, some of it is coming from a Wikipedia site here, some of it is coming from Excel spreadsheets. So, and then kind of in the background, they're all, this is where you would kind of model and transform the data, and then create your database connections and things like that in order to build the actual reports. But like what Tyson mentioned, if kind of often a good starting point is if you're working in an Excel spreadsheet, and we sometimes don't even have to change that. If the Excel spreadsheet is functioning well, we can actually just have that Excel spreadsheet saved somewhere that Power BI can access. So whether it's OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, and then we can just be creating reports that are just directly going and looking inside that Excel spreadsheet. So if, let's say, your finance department has an Excel spreadsheet that's getting updated every day, they could keep doing that same task, and then we could have reports like this generating from those Excel spreadsheets. So it really gives you a bunch of different options where you don't necessarily on the first phase have to completely migrate off of an Excel spreadsheet into a SharePoint list. It can be kind of a marriage of both, where some of it might eventually get moved, or some of it might, let's just keep using the Excel spreadsheet, it's working fine. So,
and as you mentioned, we could be pulling the data from SQL databases that are on premise. There's an application you can install on your SQL server that pushes the data up to Power BI. You could be putting SQL databases in Microsoft's cloud, which is called Azure, and storing your data there. And as Jordan mentioned, we can also connect to a wide variety of third-party data sources online. A number of cloud application providers are making their data sets available to Power BI. So if you use Salesforce, if you use other cloud-based applications, QuickBooks Online, other online accounting applications, a lot of those applications already have pre-built Power BI connectivity. So from the cloud or from the Power BI desktop, you can connect to that data source and bring that data in. And so you can bring that data in, say QuickBooks Online data, along with Excel spreadsheets that you already have. Bring the data from the tables in both of those data sets in, and then build reports based on the data that's really in two different systems, but now you're able to combine it for your reporting. There was a question: we would like to assign multiple users to review policy documents based on a due date for each user. Is that easily possible? So depending on the detailed rules of how you want to do that, we might need to front end that with a Power App and attach automation to the Power App. We would definitely want to store the documents in SharePoint, and just storing them in SharePoint, we could build some workflow and automation. But if you want tracking of it, then we have to store that tracking database. So we have to basically build another SharePoint list or data set of that tracking information. But it's definitely possible within the SharePoint Power Apps and Power Automate toolset. The next question is this presentation available at a later time? I'd like others to view the info. I believe we will be could be making this presentation available. I'll have to confirm that with whoever's in charge of putting that together, but I'll check with our team and confirm that. Any other questions? Or Jordan, was there anything else that you wanted to demonstrate? I think we covered everything you talked about. We had talked about in advance, and that we brought up through the PowerPoint early on.
Yeah, I think I kind of was able to, show the kind of broad. Yeah, I don't think I have anything really left to show. Yeah.
Yeah, so as I'd mentioned, these are not large, complicated projects. Maybe the one where we need multiple users to review multiple policy documents with dates, that could be a little more complicated. But again, the majority of the getting data in, dealing with the data, and then reporting the data, doing some business process automation, those examples that we showed, they were a couple of days of effort, easy to implement. And this really is configuration versus development. So while we are, building something that didn't previously exist, we're really just taking existing data or existing processes and modernizing them and replacing as many of the manual steps as possible. And so it's really more configuration than anything else. And it's really easy to expand. So depending on budget and timeline of what you want to do, we could just replace a paper form with a Microsoft form and store that data into Excel spreadsheets, just because it eliminates the complexity of the data entry. And then, in a couple months or, a couple quarters, whatever fits for the organization, we can take that and start building Power BI reports out of it. Or in the example Jordan showed, we could build a Power App front end instead of a Microsoft Forms front end. So these are iterative processes. You don't have to decide at the very beginning the absolute endpoint. We can start with a very simple data collection if that's the most important nail that needs to be struck. If visualization of existing data is the most important thing you need to do, then we can take existing Excel spreadsheets or existing data sets that you have and bring them into Power BI for visualization. And then talk about later on, do you want to change the process for how you gather that data or get that data in for the reporting? And do we want to add more automation into that data gathering process? So it really can be done at a variety of different levels. So we wanted to make sure we gave time for questions. So if anyone has any questions, if you're not sure how to ask questions, up in the top sort of right-hand corner of the screen, you will see a button that basically shows a little question mark. It's right beside or two over from the leave button, and right before the button that looks like a little piece of paper, and it's got a little bubble with a question, and when you hover over it, it gives you the option to put questions in to the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions they want to ask, please feel free to type any questions into that Q&A section. Jordan, what's the most time you've spent on any one, Power BI report we've built? Probably a few days.
Yeah, it's very rare that kind of any of these end up taking more than like a couple days. So and then some, yeah, it's normally for most of these like systems we've seen. So the contract management portion, the safety incident, with the list and the workflows and the reports, it's generally 2 to 3 days. It's not like it's not a 2 to 3 week 2 to 3 week project. So
yeah, I mean, it can take place over multiple days.
Yes.
As we're waiting for information to be gathered, approval based on what we've built, those types of things. Plus, often when we get into this, you start with a manual business process that you have today. As we get into the conversation of being able to automate it, you may change your business process. So that may introduce some delays as well, as the organization reviews, well, now that we can do it this way, maybe we just don't even have to do some of the steps we were doing before. So often we'll add efficiency in the data and efficiency in the overall business process.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the first steps, is always kind of taking a step back and then looking at how things are currently being done to try to see, well, now that we have these tools available, can we change how it's currently being done to make that more efficient, and how these things normally end up going as well, as they often have multiple phases where they'll start off kind of a little bit simpler, and as people have used these tools for a few months, then they start to realize, oh cool, well now that I know it could do this, it would be great if we start to track this, or let's add this to the form so that we can now report on this. So it kind of, and that's one of the other strengths, which is SharePoint in general, is it's not like other systems where you kind of had to perfectly build it at the start because it was stuck like that forever, and to make any simple change, it would just be a huge thing, where now we can just constantly be reviewing and making changes kind of on the fly. So if in a few months you realize we don't need this field anymore, or we want to add all this stuff, it's not a big kind of endeavor to just make all these changes.
Excellent. The next question we had is, what does this require in terms of licensing, software, etc., for users? So I'll answer the parts of it I can answer, and then I'll get Jordan to help out maybe with some of the other parts. So Power BI license is going to be required for being able to create those data visualizations in Power BI. And Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong, you need a Power BI license to be able to view them as well, right?
Yes. So the out of basically everything we've seen here, the only thing that doesn't come with your most standard licensing would be the Power BI portion, which is really whoever needs to kind of view the data, manipulate the data, would need a Power BI license. But the other parts, like the workflows, the SharePoint lists, the Power Apps, those are all will just come with your kind of basic Microsoft licensing. So
yeah, so depending on how you're buying your Microsoft 365 licensing today and what bundle you might or might not be in would determine what amount of Power App or Power Automate you get. You know, if you do really complicated automations that are querying a lot of data on a regular basis, you may need to add some additional Power Automate licensing. But most of what we've demonstrated today, except for the Power BI functionality, is built into most of the Microsoft 365 business plans. SharePoint is built into all the Microsoft 365 business plans that have the online services. So most of it's there. Power BI would be the biggest add-on. And the desktop Power BI application is not a requirement. Pardon me, you can build data visualizations in the online browser-based version of Power BI, but you get a lot more capability and features from the Power BI desktop application, which is no additional cost once you have the license. Jordan, have we done any automation matching POs with invoices using Microsoft 365? I don't think we've done that specifically.
No, I have.
Certainly that would be easy to do if we have a data set that has the PO information and a data set that has the invoice information. That could be brought together and then visualized via Microsoft 365.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll hang on for another minute or two, just in case anyone has any questions. Thank you all very much for attending today. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully this was valuable to everyone. And if you have any questions or want to have any further conversations, well, we can certainly book a call with Jordan, with your account manager, to help you review and determine if there's any of what we've just demonstrated today that could fit for your organization. Don't see any more questions coming in, so I think we'll close it up and thank everyone again for attending, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions you want to deal with offline. Thanks everyone, really appreciate your time today.